Yeah. So,
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
make sure it's rolling.
Shri Ganeshaya Namaha.
Okay, so I got to go through the questions that I got to do at school.
Go ahead.
But I'd rather talk about physics and Vedanta and stuff like that. But okay, what were some of the major formative events in your life?
Generally, these monks do not pay much attention to such a thinking. Namely, this is my life, these are my major formative events. That kind of an attitude which is very common in the world, everywhere you find it, nothing wrong in it, I am not suggesting it is wrong, but this kind of attitude in which we normally look at the life, the personal life, and try to look at the events as some of the major events, formative events, etc. We don't look at it like that. More than that, we look at life as a passing show. And therefore, we do not give much reality to the events themselves. In that sense, I never thought what could have been the formative events in my life. Like that, I never gave a thought to that. Now I am a bit surprised by your question. And so if I have to say, I would say I was associated with great scholars of Sanskrit language, literature, Sanskrit grammar and Vedanta, the Indian philosophy. Very great scholars of these subjects were part of my life in the very early childhood. That, I suppose, is what prepared this consciousness into a particular state. That is how I look at it. Yeah. And then life was, it sounds a bit I am complaining or I am regretting, etc. It may appear like that, but that is not the truth. I am not complaining, I am not regretting. Life was not kind to anybody for that matter. So it is uniformly punishing and painful for everybody, I think. The same is true even in my case. And therefore, the challenges that the life throws at you and the life defeats you again and again. It never allows you to win and for any length of time. The victories are a few, rare and few, and far in between. And therefore, maybe that nature of life, when you examine it, instead of trying to escape from it, as many people try to do, when you examine it, when you investigate it without escaping from it, probably that teaches many lessons. That forms the consciousness of an individual. I think so. That answers the question.
That was good. That was great.
Yeah. I have answered your question without answering it.
Oh, I enjoyed that answer. That was
okay.
I liked it. You turned a basic question into something much nicer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this one's similar. Like I said, these ones I have to ask for my teacher.
Please go ahead.
I think most people are interviewing probably their father. Or,
yeah, I know. You ask whatever you like.
Well, that I'll get to.
Yeah, no inhibitions.
Who were the major influences in your life?
Okay. I was influenced by my mother. She has put such a spell on my life. And when she left the mortal frame, I don't call it death. So that occasion was the only occasion which stunned me. And I always looked at her as a great inspiration of endurance and accommodation and the courage in the face of the afflictions of life. I always look up to her as an inspiration. That is number one. My father was one of the most outstanding scholars of Indian philosophy. He was recognized as such, and the Rashtrapati, the President of India, honored him for his scholarship. And so I was deeply influenced by his scholarship to such an extent that some of his statements as part of teaching to me the Shastra, the Indian philosophy, they are imprinted in my brain cells. Even now I can recount those statements made by him. So that is an influence. And then I studied Sanskrit language, literature and grammar with a great scholar, Shri Kumpella Subbraya Shastri, and so that was a great influence. I studied Veda, Yajurveda, with a great scholar, Shri Kumpella Kameshwara Ghanapati, and that was a great influence. And based on hindsight, I can say a lady who entered into my life and lived with me maybe more than 2 decades, which is not a big period when compared with the length of life. Her silence and her quietude, and in the face of the vicissitudes of life, her sobriety, they have an influence on me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I met Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the founder of this place,
Mm-hmm.
I was inspired by him immensely, and so that concludes the answer.
Okay, yeah. Who and what shaped your early childhood? Although I guess you kind of
I
answered
have
that
answered
before.
it, but still
Yeah.
I will say,
Yeah.
my childhood, I always felt like describing, I used to say, even now I don't mind saying, we lived like donkeys. I say like that, I say we, because I was living in a Gurukulam kind of setup.
Mm-hmm.
Means a few students come together, they are all separate, they are all away from their parents, they are living elsewhere, eating food given by somebody else, and studying the Shastra, the Veda and the Shastra, Sanskrit, etc. And in the village where I was studying in the childhood, at the age of 10, in the village, there were a few donkeys around. That Indian village, remote village, there were a few donkeys. And the donkeys, they were very hardworking and utterly neglected by the entire society, left to themselves, living in solitude probably, and they are very dumb, if I have to pronounce it, they are very dumb, very dull-witted. That is how they are perceived by the society. And if that is the description of a donkey, then my childhood was no different. But even in childhood, we were excelling in 2 things. One is study of Sanskrit language, literature and grammar, and the study of Veda. We were excelling in that. Except for that part of excellence, I am saying out of humility only, or not out of arrogance, but that excellence was there. When I look at it from the distance, the childhood, when I look at it from the distance in time today, that excellence was there. That in that we stood out. We were standing out. But except for that, we lived like donkeys. When I said this in the midst of a group of people, they told me, I was very pleasantly surprised to hear that Jesus Christ was associated with donkey in his life. So I felt very blessed that I say that I compare myself with a donkey. Yeah.
What gave you the most meaning in your life?
knowledge. When I passed BSc, the Bachelor of Science, what they call BS here, as the university first rank student, and I was told that you stand as the university first rank. That made me very happy. All other things did not feel me that happy. When I was told that I stand first rank in MSc, the Master of Science, like MS here, and then MA, Sanskrit language and literature, with grammar as a special subject, first rank in MA. Those were the moments. These moments come occasionally, one time. Then after 2-3 years, one more moment like that, when I felt very happy. And when I see a truth, when I see it, not just reading about it, when I see it, like it is physics or chemistry, which are my favorite science subjects. I am not a technology person, I am a classical science person. And so when I see a few truths of science in terms of physics or chemistry mostly, and also when I see a truth of life, when I see it, that immediate perception of the truth made me feel very exalted. That those are the moments. Other than that, money, etc., it never made me particularly ecstatic or any such thing. And the sense pleasures, etc., they are not very important. Only these were the only moments that I remember with a lot of nostalgia. Yeah.
Good.
I can add, when I submitted my PhD thesis in chemistry, I was ecstatic for a while, for a little while.
What was your thesis on? Or is it too complicated?
The chemistry of monoterpenes, organic chemistry. Monoterpenes is fragrant substances available in the plant kingdom.
Okay.
So that is the thesis. The synthetic organic chemistry, what they call.
Yeah.
And that made me very ecstatic when I submitted the thesis. Eventually it was accepted and I defended the thesis and I was granted the PhD. But when I submitted the thesis, the other things will follow. I was very ecstatic. But when I submitted my PhD thesis in Sanskrit, I was not so ecstatic about it. But in science, I was ecstatic. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay.
You made me look into the corners of a dark house that I have not looked into for decades now.
Yeah, a lot of the questions are more personal.
Yeah.
Well, I'm more interested in philosophy.
I don't mind.
But it was an excuse for me to get here and talk to you.
I'm also using it as an occasion to pull out a few things which were rather ignored and hidden in the inner recesses of the heart.
Okay. What did you learn from some of your most difficult life events?
One thing which I have learned, one of the harshest lessons in life, you never learn from pleasure, you always learn from pain only in life. That is the truth of life. One of the things that I have learned in my life, one of the harshest moments in life, at that time, now it has the life, the flow of time has smoothened it out, but at that time, never ask anything from anybody. Don't stretch the hand that is seeking something. Instead of stretching the hand any further, seeking something from the other person, you use the same hand to break your head and die, but don't stretch the hand seeking anything from anybody. You give. Whatever little or more you can give, you give. and the rest of the time you remain contented. Don't ask anything from anybody. This is the lesson which I have learned in a very bitter way I have learned it.
Okay.
You wanted some more lessons? Use time judiciously. Don't lose time, because you cannot create time. You can only conserve the time available to you and make a proper use of it. Therefore, be punctual and use time very judiciously. Time is wealth, or is more than wealth. And so that is another lesson I have learned from life, like that. Yeah. Don't seek love from others, because they will disappoint you. You give love, don't seek it. Don't seek reciprocity in relation. The moment you seek reciprocity in relation, you are vulnerable. You are in for some real sorrow.
What does it mean to be successful?
The ideas that people have about success and failure are they are the cause of a lot of pain in life. Because what you call success, say for example, you make a lot of money by your own ingenuity, that you call success. It will be with you for a short time and then it will be gone. That leaves you, when it goes, it leaves you high and dry. Therefore, the very conception of success is very problematic. And therefore, you say your question again?
Oh, sure. Well, what does it mean to be successful?
The very definition of success itself is not acceptable. Therefore, the question of successful does not arise. But yet, you say again?
Oh, what does it mean to be successful?
Suppose you keep a goal as the most important in your life, and you must reach it. If you don't reach it, your life is a waste. When you look at a particular goal that way, that is a very painful way of looking at goals, but people do that. I also did it. When I reach that goal, I naturally feel very ecstatic, very self-satisfying, and very happy. But I can say with confidence, without, I am not trying to boast about myself, that kind of an event which can be described as successful, it never made me arrogant, I suppose. And if I noticed a little arrogance has crept into my consciousness because of a success, like passing an exam as the state first candidate, etc., a little arrogance has indeed crept into the consciousness, I regretted for it for a long time. So this is how these successful moments, they do not me feel very great. They do not make me feel very good or very happy or any such thing. They make me feel a bit uncomfortable, because in those moments maybe there was some arrogance and therefore I am not very happy about it, like that. Yeah. As I told you, the pleasure doesn't teach you anything, and if success can be equated with pleasure, or it can be put besides pleasure, then there is nothing to learn from it. It is only the pain and the failure, etc., that teaches really in life. That is how I look at it. Yeah.
What did you learn when you thought you failed?
there were failures in my life, and I have to make an effort to remember the successes when I succeeded, all that. But to remember failure, I don't need to make any effort. They were there glaring or staring at me. And they are very painful also. The memory of these failures makes you very unhappy and makes you regretful. I tried to become free from this memory of earlier failures, and I recommend to the students of philosophy also that you should come out of this memory of the earlier failures, otherwise you will be feeling unhappy about these failures and all that. But it is very difficult to come out of the memory of these failures, the recollection of the failures. It is very tough to come out, and they always haunt you. They come back into your consciousness, and they make you feel very unhappy, and they make you feel the absence of self-confidence. Therefore, this problem is there. It was there with me as much as with anybody else, I suppose, and I gradually, carefully tried to overcome that. Yeah.
What are the qualities you have that you think are the most important?
Talking about failures, whatever failures were there in my consciousness or in my memory, those are, they mostly belonging to the field of science. I always regretted, the regret comes from the failure. Regret and a sense of guilt also comes from the failure. One failure which made me regret for a long time in life was that I did not do enough in the field of science. I did not study enough, I did not perform enough. I did not do enough research, some more research of somewhat higher quality, more successful research I should have done. That kind of a feeling, that sense of failure in the field of scientific research was with me. I found it difficult to overcome that sense of feeling. The next question.
Okay.
You said it, I did not answer it, one question.
What are the qualities you think you have that are most important?
Yeah. Because you asked me about my own qualities, I am obliged to say those things. Otherwise, talking about myself doesn't come easy to me.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But I will try, because I have to answer a question. You asked the question, and I respect your curiosity to know the answer. Being simple, not just outwardly, means you dress simple, and you eat simple, not that kind of outward simplicity alone. Being simple inwardly means you do not have a lot of emotional baggage because you are inwardly simple. You do not have a lot of sentimentality because you are inwardly simple. You do not subscribe to multiple identities based on race, religion, caste, creed, nation, region, etc. because you are inwardly simple. This came very easy to me. So, at the cost of being misunderstood, that I am boasting, I am saying that simplicity, inward simplicity, together with outward simplicity, it came to me very easy. Maybe because in the childhood, as I told, I lived like a donkey. A donkey is a very simple animal. Even in India, A cow is worshipped as the embodiment of God, and all gods and goddesses live in the cow, etc. It is a very sacred animal. Whereas donkey is not a sacred animal. It is entirely ignored animal it is. And therefore, in the childhood, living like a donkey, though excelling in certain pursuits of study, that made me simple the way I described, I suppose. That simplicity came to me without any effort. It is effortless and kind of very natural. And I always felt uncomfortable, odd, in a situation where I cannot be myself this way, where I have to present a posturing, I have to present a profile, I have to play to the gallery, I have to appear respectable to the company, in the company, etc. Then that kind of an situation presented itself, and I have to fit into it because of the expectations of the people around, etc. I always felt that as artificial, not natural, and felt unease, a lot of uneasiness in that situation, where I am a little different from that inner simplicity. Therefore, for me, remaining simple, both outwardly and inwardly, maybe sometimes outwardly it may not be so simple. Suppose I am wearing a very costly dress, then outwardly I am not simple, obviously. Generally I don't try to do that. But in addition to outward simplicity, the inward simplicity was very natural to me, and I am very comfortable with it. And therefore, whenever this issue of simplicity comes, I try to draw the attention of people to the inward simplicity. It is not enough that you are simple outwardly. More than that, you should be inwardly very simple. This is how I felt about it.
What are the qualities that you value most in a person?
Simplicity,
Yeah.
outward as well as inward. Punctuality. Be punctual. If you are not punctual, that only shows that you are not earnest. But punctuality shows that you have earnestness in you. I think those two qualities go together, and therefore that must be there. Of all these qualities, the one thing on which I insist that people should have this quality, they should nurture it, they should not allow that to take a hit. That quality is self-confidence. One must be self-confident in all situations. And a great scholar may be yet feel unhappy if he is not self-confident. Therefore, I suggest that the best qualification that a person can have is believing in himself. And I wish I had more self-confidence than what I experienced in my life.
How can we keep self-confidence separate from supporting our ego or making, you know what I mean, feeding that without...
Yeah, it's a very good and tricky question.
Mm-hmm.
You see, suppose I can go to the stage, to the dais, and address the gathering, and I can give them a meaningful talk for an hour. I know that. I know that I have that qualification, that ability I have. But yet, I am uncomfortable to go before the audience, and I am unsure of myself, and I am concerned and even worried whether I can do well or not. That is not helpful at all. That is what I mean when I say self-confidence. That it is not enough that I have the ability to address the gathering in a very meaningful way. I know that I can do, but still I feel all these things. It is very, very, very inhibiting, and it is it makes you, it incapacitates you, if I can say so. It has nothing to do with arrogance.
Yeah.
You should feel the worth which you have, unless otherwise you will not be able to perform in a social situation. Therefore, the self-confidence that I am talking about is not to be confused with arrogance.
Yeah.
It is not about the ego, it is about the inner worth which you have. It's an endowment, and you know it. Having known that it is an endowment and you have that worth given you, then you should feel confident about it. It has nothing to do with ego. Otherwise, what happens? You will be hurting yourself. Therefore, I sincerely suggest to the young people, be self-confident. That should not be confused with be arrogant. Yeah.
What advice would you give me about how to live?
I would say, in this world, the supreme power is love. No military power can come anywhere near the power of love. Know that. And you think about it, you contemplate upon that, and realize the glory and the might of love. Love is the mightiest, mightier than any other power in this world. Know that. And in knowing that, you become free. There is freedom. And freedom and love, they are one and the same. They are not different. When there is love in the heart, you are free. When there is freedom, then only you will be able to love. So seek freedom and love. Don't seek other things of life. They are silly. And in a relation, this is the most challenging task in any relation. You try to enrich the relation with love. Don't put reciprocity, etc. into the relation. You will hurt yourself. Nobody can live up to your expectation in any relation as long as you have expectations. When you don't have any expectation, then the relationship becomes a marvelous blessing. Therefore, I suggest give first importance to freedom, not political freedom, not physical freedom, the psychological freedom from expectations, from desires. And that psychological freedom, unless you have it, you will never know what love is. And in a given relation, you practice this. You don't try to exploit the relation for your egoic advantage. You try to enrich the relation with love. So that is one of the greatest qualities one should acquire. That is how one should live. Because life is relation. Without relation, there is no life. Life is relation. And a relations become a source of conflict and suffering when we do not have that love in our heart. And in a relation, you have expectations, you have desires to fulfill in the relation. And I am not talking of physical expectations and all that, I am talking of psychological seeking. So you seek psychological advantage in a relation. That is very painful. Therefore, you drop all that. In fact, seeking psychological advantage in a relation, that is what defines an ego. So drop it. Try to drop it at least. Then you will discover the freedom. Freedom from that egoity, which is defined by the seeking psychological advantage. So when you have that freedom, then only you can discover what love is. And love is God. That is the real spirituality. That is the true religion. Therefore, one should strive for that.
I think that's all my questions for my teacher. Yeah. But I would like to ask you about, because my class is about ethics, and I was especially interested in the last paper I wrote was about trying to look at ethics non-dualistically, because in the West, ethics and our ethical philosophy, it's based on good versus evil, and it seems almost like it makes people feel morally superior, the way it's set up. And I wondered if you could talk about maybe looking at ethics through a non-dualistic, if you think that, you know.
You see, the ethics based on a conclusion that the variety and the differences or the truth are not the right kind of ethics. Like you divide the humanity into good and evil, and then the division is sacrosanct and it is absolute, and then you build a system of ethics and morals on that basis. It is bound to be flawed. And you see what happens whenever the yardstick with which you determine the good and evil is changed, or it is moved up and down, the good becomes evil and the evil becomes good. Therefore, good and evil are relative, and they are in relation to the measuring, the yardstick of the yardstick of your measurement, and therefore they are not absolute. We should know that. In God consciousness, what we call God consciousness, the good-evil duality vanishes. That is what God consciousness is. And therefore, any ethics and morals based on that kind of divisive thinking are flawed. In non-duality, the truth is one, but appears as many. Therefore, there are differences, but there is no division. And now you can accommodate the differences, because you know the differences do not make division. And therefore, it is easy to forgive the other person. Forgiveness comes easy. Love comes easy. You can love thy enemy only when you and the enemy, the so-called enemy, are essentially the same reality. You love thy neighbor. You can do that only when the neighbor appears as a neighbor and therefore different from you, but he is not divided from you in essence. We are all one in essence, but different in the appearance. And therefore, this kind of a vision, in this vision, you see God in all. You see God in the so-called evil people also. There is no evil people. You love everybody. And you are able to overlook the outward manifestation of the consciousness, because you are focused on the inward or the inner source of consciousness, which is the same in all conscious beings, which means in all living beings. Therefore, the ethics and morals based on this vision of non-duality alone can be the real ethics and morals. In the dualistic ethics and morals, there can be no scope for any forgiveness. How can you forgive the evil which is really evil? How can you forgive? The forgiveness is made possible only in non-dualistic vision. Love is possible only in non-dualistic vision. Because you know what love is? Love is a unity in diversity. If diversity is real, then there can be no love. Love is possible only when there is unity in diversity. That is the definition of love. Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel laureate philosopher of India, philosopher, poet of India, he defined love as unity in diversity. I was very inspired by that definition of love. And in India, even the social life, the political life to some extent, and even the constitution that is the book by which the governance is shaped. There is this unity of diversity in all that. In the Indian society you find it. There are issues with the Indian society. I am overlooking all of them and trying to point this out. Therefore, the morals and ethics must be based on love, forgiveness, unity in diversity, based on the vision that there are differences, but differences do not make division. There are opposites, but there is no opposition. North Pole and South Pole are opposites, but both are same in magnetism. Therefore, there are opposites, but there is no opposition. There are differences, but there is no division. That spirit of non-duality is the essence of ethics and morals that we see in a Rama, in a Krishna, in a Buddha, in a Christ. That is the basis of their ethics and morals, and we should try to understand that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.